Hello, Monday. Ooh, bit croaky. Still, we can handle it. Okay. Monday. Starting with too much debt at all levels. It's a Gluskin Chef chart, so it's our Rosie. Domestic debt outstanding as a percentage of GDP. Domestic debt outstanding as a percentage of GDP. Just another measure. But interesting, on the far left of this, with the biggest sticky upness, is the Netherlands, Holland. Then Japan in second. Denmark, my favourite place, third. Then France, where I reside. Fourth, Belgium, Spain, Sweden, the Euro area on average. Portugal, Norway, Italy, Austria, all grouped round there. And then United States, Australia, Germany, Canada and Greece. It's just an opening about too much debt, and there's a percentage of adjusted GDP, and those numbers are 750% for Holland, 300% for Greece. Top to the bottom of that chart from good old Rosenberg. Right, let's move on to this morning's Financial Times, and there's plenty to pull out of this article. Japan's economy shrinks annualized 3.5%. That's between July and September. It's the steepest decline since earthquake hit in the first quarter of 2011. Noda said it was severe, and the economy minister said they had entered a recessionary phase. Japan posted relatively strong growth in the first half of the year as output was boosted by redevelopment of parts of the northeast affected by the tsunami. So this is the third paragraph of the article, and I've put in that to show that what we were talking about a week ago, it does look like modern GDP makes the broken window fallacy into a fallacy. Yeah. Modern GDP will be boosted by natural disasters, making the broken window fallacy into a fallacy. But in the third quarter, manufacturers cut production amid steady worsening in their profit outlooks, causing the economy to contract 0.9% according to initial estimates. And we jump down consecutively to this paragraph. Increases in public spending and a small rise in private residential investment were not enough to offset a 5% fall in exports, which contributed to a 0.5% fall in private consumption. And I'm going on with this article because that shows us all these balances. Oh, the word didn't quite come to mind. Sectoral balances that all sometimes things have to balance out, and it makes life so much easier than when you pick a group of things and they have to balance out to zero or make up 100%. It's good to know that when one goes down, then something else has got to go up, or if something goes up, something else has got to fall down. So that's why it's always fun to watch sectoral balances, and this is what coup and all this the government has to spend when other people are saving sort of thing kicks in. As many economic indicators have deteriorated further since September, it seems likely that the country, Japan, has entered its fifth technical recession in the past 15 years. So 5 recessions in the last 15 years, and I think this will be the killer for I couldn't see properly. The fifth recession in 15 years. Japan's got terrible debt, and now again another recession. I think it'll show countries like the United States that not to do coups, balancing of things. They'll say, well, look, they've been at it for nearly 20 years and they're still in deep shit. What's the point of that? And that's why I don't think the West will go with it. I think the West is OECD is going to fall into a hole soon, and they will be tempted to go to government spending again, like Koo would recommend them to do. But I think they will resist due to things like saying, well, it hasn't really in the end done you any good because you're still in deep doodah. And then Koo will just bang his head on his keyboard, totally exasperated like I will, because they haven't quite understood the full picture. That, okay, he'll say, okay, I told you, I tried, go ahead, and your economy will start gurgling down the hole, and you'll be forced into doing it anyway, and you'll be in much worse position. That would be roughly what it is. And if he's proved to be right, it's going to be very expensive and very embarrassing. Finish with this in the United States and go on to explain it a bit more. This is from the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office. The chart starts in 2000. About a third way across, it's got a serrated dotted line going up it, and then it projects itself out to 2035 and a little bit more. So obviously everything to the right of the serrated line is projections, projected, and to the left is actual what happened up till now. The other non-interest spending is the bottom graph there. I don't understand what that is. You can follow the link and find out if you're interested. Social security is the middle one, and healthcare is at the top. If you notice the bottom one, other non-interest spending, the reason I haven't gone into this is a link to the PDF from the CBO. It starts at about 8 in 2000 and goes up to about 9 in 2036. So it's a 1% of GDP increase, and so we will not worry about it too much. Social security, United States, starts at about 4 in the year 2000 and goes to about 6. Again, it's a rise, but from a 36-year rise, it shows a tendency, but it's only going from 4% of GDP to 6% of GDP. It's to be watched, but it's not critical. The critical one is obviously Medicaid and Medicare, which goes from 3 or 4 to both of them together, 4% of GDP, up to over 10% of GDP, or around 10% of GDP. So a rise of about 6% of GDP, and a rise of 60% of GDP is big money. And that is where the problem is. So I wanted to talk about Ken Arrow here. Ken Arrow got his Nobel Prize for Economics, and we know that's kind of throwaway junk, but, you know, it's something. It shows he's recognised. Okay, he got his Nobel Prize for that. Or they don't... Laureate. He's a Nobel laureate for that. For what? For Adam Smith wrote in his first book about the invisible hand, about how our individual decisions work to manipulate the market to do the right thing for us. Roughly something like that. Ken Arrow got his Nobel Prize for proving that in many cases this is correct, and he did the modern economic thing of equations and all that, showing how it does actually work. And then, this isn't quite true, but I'll say it this way, and then went on to dedicate the rest of his life to show all the places where it doesn't work because certain parameters weren't in play. And if those certain parameters aren't in play, the invisible hand is invisible because it isn't there and it doesn't work. Market forces just basically don't work. And at one extreme where market forces do work would be the classic, it's normally the bread shop, but let's say selling shoes. That's where market forces do work most brilliantly. One place it works absolutely not is healthcare. It's only logical, sensible, and jolly lucky for places like Japan and Europe that they fell on this by accident. Not Ken Arrow's work, because they'd started this beforehand, that they fell to taking healthcare under the government's wing, and that is where it should be, economically speaking, via Ken Arrow. And then you can get all the other things that are kind of in between in an economy and decide where they should be. You decide how much of democratically, how much you think should be spent on something like healthcare, and then you could decide, if this was all ideal and you started from nowhere, then you decide, well, who's best to supply it? Obviously, healthcare is best to be supplied by the government. So you decide, well, we'll keep it at 10% of GDP, and that's it. And the government will sort that out. And that would be the logical thing to do. And shoes are always sold by the market. And then you work out via Arrow's Nobel laureate equations whether it's best to supply roads and this and that. And then you democratically decide how many roads you want. And then who's best to supply them. And if they're going to supply them, they supply them. And that becomes that percentage of GDP. It can be done. This is vaguely moving towards a country like China, who could maybe do it this way. They've got the work of people like Ken Arrow, who have got this decided, and they've got an almost virgin state to try and get things right. They've got enough of a big state that they can now start taking healthcare on the state side. And they've done enough of this free market stuff that they know it's far best to let all the importing, exporting and shoe selling, etc. go completely free market, and then shuffle things up into the middle, sorting things out basically where they should be. And there's a chance that they could have a state that works as well as a state could ever work. It's not much of a chance, because they're humans and they'll get it wrong. And Ken Arrow will have been a human and he will have got some things wrong as well. But it's always easier to fire off old information and past mistakes of other countries. But we often have so much pride that we don't do it. Like the Western governments will not do Japan's QE8 and roads to nowhere. They will do it their way. It's human nature. We are so much better than those old people that have lived through things. Even if they were old and did them only 15 years ago, we generally always know better. That's it for Monday. Bye.